All right, we'll go ahead and get started, and if anybody comes in a little late, that's fine. So I want to welcome you to Eating Healthy on a Budget. And my name is Allison, and I'm a holistic health coach. So we're going to talk about a little bit about why healthy food is so expensive, and then I'll give you some tips on how you can eat healthy and maybe not spend so much money. So usually I tell people a little bit about myself before I get started, because health coaching is a little bit new in this area. Tends to be the typical Midwest thing. It's more popular along the coast, and then it slowly works its way in. So I started kind of my journey to health in high school, and my journey didn't start out so great because my concern was being extremely skinny as I could possibly be, because I emulated the magazine models, and obviously that wasn't the healthy way to go. I did the fad diets and diet pills. I did extreme exercising. I did calorie restriction, all things that were not showing my body love and support. I relied a lot on low-fat, fat-free packaged foods, thinking that any fat I ate would make me fat, and not really thinking about the fact that those foods had a lot of sugar and a lot of chemicals in them. I never felt physically satisfied after I ate. I always had like carb cravings. I never felt happy with my body or the way I looked. And reliance on those foods and that kind of lifestyle, I stuck with that through college, through getting married, having my first child, and when my son Landon was young, my doctor said he was having the failure to thrive. I don't know if your mom's out there, that's really scary, because they said he wasn't gaining weight. They were really concerned. So for him, I kind of went the opposite direction. I was still using a lot of the packaged and processed foods, but I was looking for as many calories as I could find. And that wasn't working for him either. He was still as thin as could be, and I just could not figure it out. I was extremely frustrated, felt like a failure. And I was in a play group, and a really great mom, she grew up in California. So again, it's like the coastal coming to the Midwest. And she knew so much about nutrition and health, and really dealing with nutrition in the form of thinking of it as medicine and fuel for your body, instead of just worrying about calories as I always had. And so that's my passion for health and my passion for nutrition. And I started feeding our family better. We got off the processed packaged foods. We started eating more whole foods. We got healthier. We had energy. We don't get sick very often. I mean, just so many amazing changes happened for us. So that's why I decided to become a health coach, because I wanted to share my journey and help other people who are also on their journey. And in my journey, I've really come to appreciate and nourish my body, and not get frustrated with it when it doesn't do what I think it should be doing. And I want to help other people do the same thing, not deprive themselves and punish themselves, but really fuel and nourish their bodies. So we're going to talk about healthy eating on a budget, which is a really challenging subject, and I'm going to probably challenge your perception a little bit as we go through this. So you are in the right place if you're wondering why healthy foods seem so expensive, and you want to know how to make the most of your budget and get the most health out of it, and you're also interested in investing in the health of your family and yourself. So when we think about food and think about the prices of food, what's our goal in eating food? Is it to get the most calories from our money, the most convenience from our money, or the most nutritional value for our money? Because that perspective changes the way we look at food prices. So I'm going to go through them kind of in order. The first one we're going to look at is if we're looking at buying the most calories for our money. So if we're buying the most calories for our money, we do tend to go for the packaged or processed foods. And the reason for that is these products tend to be cheaper because of the ingredients that go into these foods. They tend to be higher in calories, less nutritional value as far as the ingredients. And a lot of main ingredients come from corn and soy, which are commodity crops in our country. and they're subsidized. So it helps keep those prices cheap, and that's why those packaged foods and processed foods end up being cheaper as well. So I found this interesting. This is what we subsidize in the United States. So 84% is the cotton, the wheat, the corn, rice, soy. And a lot of what I'll focus on is, in this little chunk, is the corn and the soy. Dairy, livestock, and others, 15%. Basically, less than 1% is fruits and vegetables as far as what the U.S. government subsidizes. So it's a really interesting. You can also look at it in the way, this is what the USDA wants us to eat as far as my plate. They see the vast difference in how they're subsidized. And then this is another kind of cool graphic. You guys can see that on the right is the my plate, but if we turned my plate into the subsidies, that's what it would look like. So that's all kind of fascinating. And if we received federal subsidies directly, over $7 would go for junk food, and just 11 cents would go towards an apple. And that's just showing you the portions and why, when we go out to go grocery shopping, comparatively, yes, healthy food is a lot more expensive than junk food, and this is part of the reason why. So some of the things that corn and soy become, usually they're low nutrient fillers. Corn syrup, specifically we talk about high fructose corn syrup, and almost everybody knows about that. Vegetable oils, the partially hydrogenated ones, and those are the trans fats, and that's another thing. More and more we're hearing we need to avoid those. Also, corn and soy become feed for livestock, and a lot of times this is because it helps fatten the livestock up faster. It's cheaper for farmers as well. So just down the line, that's what the corn and the soy become. This next slide is kind of interesting. This is, in my research I found, so if we are what we eat, Americans are corn and soy. And this was from CNN. Their medical correspondent had a UC Berkeley plant biologist test a sample of his hair. And it's a carbon-based testing, so they can see what your diet is made up of, and which is fascinating to me that they can even do that. But the result was 69%, and that hair sample was corn. That's a lot. So Todd Dawson, who is the biologist, said Americans are like corn chips walking because we have such a high fraction of our diet from corn. And that's because it's an additive in so many of our products. And soy, in this article, accounted for about 10% of what we ate. So it's like almost 80% of what we would commonly eat would be soy and corn, which is interesting. And so we look at, when we're looking at soy, I have that little in parentheses omega-6 versus omega-3. That's one issue that we're tending to run across when it comes to our health, is that we're eating way too much omega-6 and not enough omega-3. And that's partially due to the soy content in our food. So the question becomes, is all this corn and soy healthy for us? There was some research done by a federal health survey. They surveyed over 10,000 adults to see what their diet was for a day. And they found that high consumption of calories from these subsidized commodities, greater probability of both obesity and type 2 diabetes. And it shows that the other research shows that the consumption of processed and refined foods are the root cause of most illnesses for Americans. Obesity, heart disease, type 2 diabetes, and depression among those illnesses. Depression in there is kind of unusual. Most people are like, yes, heart disease, obesity, those are all kind of linked. The depression is kind of from that last slide. The omega-6, omega-3 balance does some kind of strange things that can help impact depression and put that at a higher risk. So this is the part where I'm talking about, I'm kind of trying to change your perspective a little bit, because we are looking comparatively at healthy food versus unhealthy food. So what's the real cost? An article written by Dr. Mark Hyman, it's estimated that healthcare costs related to obesity are $118 billion per year. And that's almost 12% of our total healthcare expenditures. And then you look at 72% of Americans are overweight and over 1/3 are medically obese. So I've given you some kind of bad news, about our food system. So I want to show you something really cool, a really great turnaround that happened for a particular man. So Wally Bishop, he's a certified nutritional counselor, and he and his wife ate the SAD diet for years, and that's the standard American diet. It's processed food and fast food. He was 450 pounds. His wife had debilitating fibromyalgia, and 3 doctors, 7 prescriptions. To me, that doesn't sound like that much given some of their health situations, but he said in his article they were constantly getting blood work, scans, in the emergency room, urgent care, all the time, just constantly. So they decided to do something about it, and they changed their diet to nutrient-dense foods. Wally lost 210 pounds. His wife became more active, and they reduced their prescriptions. So for somebody with fibromyalgia, just to be active in general, that's a big turnaround for her. So what I want you to really focus on is their out-of-pocket medical expenses. So in 2006, $13,000 in out-of-pocket medical expenses. And 3 years later, less than $1,000 per year. And this is all due to dietary change. So when we're looking at the foods we eat, it's hard to not just look at what you see in the grocery store and say, that product is so much cheaper than this product, this is what I'm going to go for. So what I want you to consider is where the other costs are hitting us and when. The total cost of what we eat isn't necessarily reflected in the immediate moment. It may be a cumulative cost over time. So let's look at buying food for convenience. So maybe we're in a situation where we're extremely busy. We all have busy lives, we work a lot, I understand. That's the way the United States is. It's a rushed society. So we may be looking at buying food for its convenience value. And this again may be packaged or processed food, or it may be fast foods or eating out. So what else should we consider besides subsidies when we think about food costs? So we're going to look at fast food versus home cooked. So is fast food really cheaper, and is it any quicker? So if it works, I'm going to play this little video clip because I think it is really it's really got some good information in it. I apologize, I'm not used to a Mac computer.
Tonight's Real Money. We all tend to think a trip to the fast food drive-thru will save time, even money. So, are you ready for the fast food challenge? ABC's David Zico shows you how the money can stay in your wallet.
Hi, Evelyn. Evelyn Molina
This is
has
not
a
3 minutes
confession.
long, so it's
So
not
you
too
eat
long.
out a lot, huh?
Yeah.
This Miami mommy blogger is living life in the fast food lane. Some fried rice, Chinese takeout last night, chicken fingers for lunch. Evelyn and her husband Nick are spending $300 a week on fast food. You think it's faster to eat fast food?
Right.
And so many families think so too. But is it really saving them time? We decided to put a clock on it with Bradley Heron, executive chef at the Genuine Hospitality Group. Here's what's going to happen. Nick and I, we're going to hit a drive-thru. You're going to whip up something with Chef Bradley, Mom, and we're going to see who can do it faster. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Yeah. And we're off.
We're going to cut those just into wedges.
Testing speed and cost. We head to the Molina's favorite drive-thru spot, just 3 miles away, while Chef Bradley shows Mom how to cook up a dinner just as tasty.
Perfect.
They cook fast, while we choose fast food at Pollo Tropical.
That's it.
Chef tells Mom to slice everything extra thin,
By cutting it thin, it's going to cook quick.
cutting the cooking time of this dish in half to just 8 minutes. They slice, while we're still waiting in line. Cooking fresh is always faster than defrosting. We finally order
Can I get a full chicken with rice and beans?
and go through 2 more windows.
There you go.
About 20 minutes. To get our dinner.
Thank you.
Who will win this fast food challenge? home stretch.
Dinner's ready.
Whoa, Dad at 31 minutes, but Mom wins it at just 22.
I'm amazed. I think really amazed.
And the cost? $22 for the drive-thru, $12 for a home-cooked meal.
I underestimated the amount of time they actually spent to pick something up.
You saved like 50%.
Yeah. And you still have leftovers.
Right.
Just by cutting their fast food habit by 2 dinners a week, the Molinas can save more than $2,200 this year.
And the captain of the
So I thought that was an interesting video I wanted to share because it really gave a true example of what the difference is. So the results in that, oh, sorry, I don't know why it's like that, but the $22 versus $12 and then 31 minutes versus 22 minutes. So that's quite a difference. Okay, so the third one is buying the most nutrition for our dollar. So now this amount might be a little shocking. There was a study done by Harper, and it showed that the healthiest diet cost just $1.50 more per day per person than the unhealthiest diet. And when they did this, it was on a wide spectrum. So you're looking at the unhealthiest diet at one end and the healthiest diet on the other. And there's a $1.50 difference between this wide margin. So that is about $550 per person, or for a family of 4, $2,200. So that seems like a lot. But you think back to the video that we just watched and how much they said they could save in a year just from getting rid of the fast food. So, and that was 2 days a week is what they said in that video. So you can really cover the difference pretty easily. And the other thing I'd like you to keep in mind is, as I go through the tips in just a couple of minutes, you'll see this number show up again. And it's really totally a coincidence, but it's kind of funny how it'll match up again. And I also want you to consider when you're looking at healthy food in terms of being satisfied with your meal, volume and nutritional value, healthy food can really be cheaper than the junk food. If you look at a serving size of chips versus a serving of black beans, and if you don't like black beans, pick something else, raw vegetable of some kind, different kind of bean. Which would keep you fuller longer? And which would you tend to overeat? So those are some other things to consider. So that's just a brief look at valuing food in different ways, by calories, nutritional value, by convenience. But there are maybe other factors at play when you're drawn more to the cheap, convenient foods rather than home-cooked meals. So other possible factors might be that you're not sure what to make, or you don't know how to make certain foods. Going to the grocery store or meal planning might be a pain. Might be something you don't want to spend time doing. You just hate to cook. I know there's people out there that don't like to cook. And some of us have become addicted to the packaged processed foods and just can't imagine, it'd be like withdrawal without them. Or the last one, which I find is really interesting, have we been conditioned to think that food should be cheap rather than seeing the full picture of the costs associated with how we eat? This chart I find really interesting. Hopefully it might be kind of hard to see. At the very top is the United States, and this is how much each country spends on food, given their budget, given their expenditures. United States, it's 6.5%. So as an average, we only spend 6.5% of our expenditures on food. And as you look more, I think of the European countries, typically going to the markets and having fresh food and, doing more of that type of lifestyle. So France, they spend 13.6%, and Italy 14.2%. So we do spend a lot less of our, daily, or of our budget on food comparatively to other countries. And before I go through the tips, I'm going to just leave you with this quote because I think it's really telling and something that would helps us think about this in a different perspective. But Michael Pollan, he's the author of The Omnivore's Dilemma, and that's a really good book if you ever have interest in reading health books, which I do. Cheap food is an illusion. There's no such thing as cheap food. The real cost of food is paid somewhere. And if it isn't paid at the cash register, it's charged to the environment, or to the public purse in the form of subsidies, or it's charged to your health. So I'm going to have, which of my lovely assistants wants to pass some stuff out? I think I got the right number there. We'll give her a minute to pass those out, and then we'll go over those tips. And I have them all written down so you can keep them, so you don't have to take notes, and hopefully that'll give you all that you need to know. Brandon, will you do these ones too, please? Okay, so tip number 1 is meal plan. So this helps us to avoid food waste. And as you see on the form, this is where that number shows up again. The average household wastes $2,200 worth of food over a year. And there's a website called Plan to Eat that you can use for meal planning. There is a little bit of a fee involved, but it's really great because it does the shopping list for you. You know, you put in the recipes you want, and it gets everything all organized. So it's kind of a cool thing to do. Number 2, stick to your grocery list and don't go on an empty stomach. That's where the most impulse buys happen, is if you don't have a plan and if you go on an empty stomach. So you can save a lot of money just in the planning process and being prepared before you go. And also noted on your sheet, if you hate grocery shopping, Hy-Vee does have delivery service and a pickup service. And if you spend $100 or more, it's free. So that's a pretty awesome option. Buy in bulk when you can. And these would be items that you can store easily. Obviously, you don't want to buy a whole bunch of stuff that's going to go bad. Grains and beans are really good. You can stock up on frozen vegetables, frozen produce. Those are really good things to do that with. But seek out the local farmer or CSA. When you cut out the middleman, you're going to save some money. You're also going to get fresher items and more sustainable items usually too, because you think of you don't have the truck or the airplane or the boat that is bringing those items from all over the countries, the world to bring us food. And I do have, again, some websites you can reference if you want to find some local farmers. Eatwild.com, they sometimes have local hunters on there as well, if you like that type of game, type of meat. Grow your own food or participate in a community garden. Again, I have resources for where our local community gardens are. And planting your own food can be really easy. It can be really fun. I think it's a good thing to do as a family. And it's good for you because it makes you get outside. So another thing is buy in season, and that's where you're going to find the cheapest and the tastiest produce, really, is if you're buying in season. And if you buy a lot in season, you can always freeze it and have it for when it's not in season anymore, when you're going to have the more expensive, and it's not going to taste as good when it's not in season. So forget the pre-washed and ready produce. And again, this is if you're solely focused on the money aspect of it. You know, if you're buying for convenience, yeah, it's awesome to have the pre-washed and the pre-prepared produce. But if you're looking solely at saving money, you'll want to buy the whole vegetable or the whole fruit and do the prep work yourself. Cooking at home is a big one. I probably harp on this a lot, but you're gonna have the best quality meals by cooking at home from scratch. There's so many ways to cut time. If you cook once and eat multiple times, that's a great option. You can cook a few days worth of a protein and a grain, and Every day, add a different vegetable to change it up a little. Add a different spice to change it up. You can do, it's a lot in the preparation phase that makes the cooking easier. Beans and lentils are a really great source of protein. They're much cheaper than your meats, and they have fiber. So that's something a lot of us are missing, is adequate amount of fiber in our diet. So that's a win-win. Whole grains such as quinoa and brown rice, these are things you can usually buy in bulk, and they last for a long time. They round out your meal. Again, they have fiber and a nutritional value that you can add to your meal. This one is really easy to facilitate when you do have a local farmer, but buying a whole animal or a share of an animal and using that. In the cooking class that I just did yesterday at MCSA, Chef Tess from Hy-Vee showed us how to use a whole chicken, which I won't personally use because I'm a vegetarian, but the rest of my family eats meat, so my husband can do it. But you know, she really showed how you can use the whole animal, and it saves you money, and it's, you know, it saves them weight, you know, part of the animals that might have been wasted. It's a really good thing. Nancy Jew said that she usually can get 3 meals out of, you know, a fairly small chicken. So that's something to consider, again, for cost savings. Store food properly. Again, we talk about the waste, how much money is spent on waste, but also in the U.S., 30 to 40% of the food supply is wasted, and that's about 20 pounds per person per month. That's a lot of food that goes to waste. So, and I always love Google. If you have any question on how to store food, I mean, you usually find the answer pretty quickly on Google. Drink tap water as your main source of fluid. It's definitely healthier for you than any of the Gatorades or the pop or the juices. I mean, pretty much water is, if you can, make it your go-to fluid. It's cheaper and it's better for you. And tap water is really well regulated. They're required to have an annual report available, what contents of various things are in the water. You can do a filter if you want to. But otherwise, you know, tap water is a good way to go. If you're buying organic, which some people like to do, I personally do, you can prioritize your budget. There's a great Dirty Dozen Clean 15 resource, the Environmental Working Group. I gave you that link as well. But that's a good thing to use if you do want to add organic food into your diet. And I typically like to stay local if possible, but if you're really needing to save money, you can try some online shopping. There's a place called Thrive Market and then Vitacost that I've used, and I've had friends use that like those. But that's where you get things like, you know, like your natural nut butters are usually cheaper. Sometimes things like coconut oils and things that are more like superfoods, or if somebody has a gluten-free diet they need to do. Sometimes you'll find those cheaper kind of specialty products on those 2 websites. And I invite you to consider the future costs when you're looking at your grocery budget and deciding what to spend it on. Consider future medical bills and your quality of life too, because you really can put a value on that. And then the last tip is take advantage of great online resources, and I gave you a couple below. The Environmental Working Group has a great PDF file you can download from them, and it has you know, shopping tips and recipes and all kinds of great things on that. Also, there's a blog, and there's a cookbook that goes with it, but it's 100 Days of Real Food. Very family focused, but again, she has some great recipes. The one I linked on there is 6 meals that would be for a family that cost less than a church and wallet. So hopefully these tips are helpful, and if any of you want to take this further and do more for your health, I'm just going to briefly tell you how you can do that. So how do you guys feel about these tips and about eating healthy on a budget? I know some of the things I shared were kind of a perception change maybe. thinking about food being cheap versus food being expensive. So many of these tips seem really simple, you know, and you can Google any of this information. But making change can be overwhelming, and that's why we tend to stay in our comfort zone. We tend to stay in the same patterns and behaviors. And so my job as a health coach is to help people break out of those patterns and behaviors so you really can make a sustainable change. And I like to think of some of the stuff as like the New Year's resolution syndrome. And January 1, and this can be the same when you get new information or you see a new diet or anything, you're really excited and you're ready to go and make the change, and you do it for a while, and then you hit February 1st, for example, and then just downhill from there, you go back to your old habits. It's not sustainable. So why is that? Is it because we didn't see results quickly enough? Or is it harder than we thought it was going to be? So it's hard to do on your own. So the bottom line is most of us know what to do to go further on our health journey, but we don't always do it. So what's the missing link? And that's where I like to help people, because the method, there's a right method. There's so much noise out there. There's so many fads. There's so many different things, and it can be very overwhelming. So as a health coach, I can help you sort through that information and get really the relevant information to make the change that you want to make. Also, a health coach provides the support and encouragement and also accountability, because there are times that we make poor choices. And if you're accountable to somebody, it's much harder to make those poor choices. So what I like to offer anybody who comes to my presentations is a free 60-minute session, and no strings attached. It's purely just to see where your health goals are and where you're stuck when you're working towards those health goals. And people walk away with great insights. If you're stuck in a rut, how to break through that and keep going on the path to success. So what I love about health coaching is that it's not dieting. It's not based on negative. It's not based on temporary quick fixes. It's truly like food is fuel. It's a lifelong journey. It's about conscious choices. It's about daily choices. And it's about building self-awareness. And then from there, you create positive habit change. So Bryn should have also handed you an orange, yellow, I guess kind of goldish color sheet. And that's a form we can fill out if you'd like more information, either if you'd like to do a free session or if you'd like to be a part of my newsletter, which right now I'm doing it monthly, and I give tips every month. Sometimes recipes are included. And some of the other information on there is purely, if there's certain obstacles you're struggling with, or it helps me know what to do for my next presentations, what people are interested in learning more about. So go ahead and fill that out if you're interested, and you can either bring it back here or bring it and pick it up. And I appreciate you guys being here today, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask.